Hey, Sports OS, Dan Kaufman here, Sport Techie's Managing Director. This next conversation is called Investing in New Tech Trends, Finding the Signal in the Noise. It is my pleasure to welcome to the stage a brilliant mind in the blockchain cryptocurrency space, David Pakman, Managing Partner at CoinFund. We're really happy to have you here, David. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks, everybody. Nice to be here.
David, let's start with just giving us the lay of the land from a blockchain crypto technology standpoint. Tell us what you're seeing in the market as far as the most common or popular applications and maybe a little bit about what you might see later in the year.
Well, crypto thus far has been around for about 10, 11, 12 years, going back to the original Bitcoin white paper, and it's evolved incredibly since then. It's about a 2.7 or $3 trillion industry today in terms of total market cap of what it's created. It swings wildly in price, but there are many thousands of companies building all sorts of different layers of what's really going to become a decentralized application architecture. We're going to build apps in software land much differently than we build them today. And the key differences are that they're decentralized. There's no single company in the middle of any application or service, and that we all can be part owners in the layers of the technology that we use. So we sort of trade middlemen and control for decentralization, maybe some democracy, one will hope, but certainly some coordination or co-ownership. What's worked so far in the last decade? Well, certainly just the buying and selling of crypto assets has happened. We've got 100 or 200 million wallets in the world, maybe 50 or 100 million people who own crypto assets. They buy, sell, and trade them. The borrowing or loaning against those assets, what's generally called DeFi or decentralized finance, a way to do peer-to-peer financial transactions against cryptocurrencies. That's big. We have about $100 billion of total value locked into that ecosystem. Something that most consumers know about is NFTs, non-fungible tokens, which are really just property rights for digital creations. They enable things like digital collectibles, play-to-earn gaming, obviously the 10,000 profile picture ecosystems that have been built. That's definitely tipping too. So I would argue that maybe those are the three areas of crypto that we're seeing mainstream adoption. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff still to come. There's like DAOs and the use of blockchain for other things, but that's where I've been focused.
Interesting. And then let's jump into the sports world. We obviously Dapper Labs and NBA Top Shot was a big deal and is remaining a big deal, and people know about that. To your point, NFTs has become a common knowledge to most. But what does the space within sports look like, and how does that compare to the broader ecosystem?
Well, I think if we look back in time, sort of pre-internet, it's really clear that sports fans love to participate in the ecosystems around their teams, right? We buy jerseys. Many of us bought baseball cards or traded sports cards. We buy memorabilia, collect baseballs or bats or autographs. There's always been this sort of ancillary set of activities that we do when our teams are not on the field or on the court, right? But in the digital world, that's basically been impossible. We haven't really been able to collect any digital items because the digital items have never been scarce before. People just copy them, and there's no way to prove that there's some scarcity or authenticity, which is part of a requirement for collecting. Well, blockchains changed all that with the introduction of NFTs, which take digital items and can ensure that they're scarce, limited number of them, and can prove who the owner is and prove their authenticity. And so once NFTs came about, it's no surprise that one of the very first popular use cases were sports collectibles, which is really what Dapper Labs launched in partnership with the NBA Top Shot. This is a collectible experience around video highlights from basketball. And so you start by collecting them, trading them, completing sets, doing all the things that collectors do. But you also can take these moments and use them in games. Maybe you think of a fantasy type game or a head-to-head sports game. And so NFTs can be more than collectibles. They can also be in-game assets that you use, and they can actually improve or get more rare or better over time. Mm-hmm. So that's an obvious, in retrospect, right, a real obvious place that we would expect to see collectibles appear in sports, and I think it's just starting.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's dive deep on that. You are on the board at Dapper Labs. You led a couple of their fundraising rounds. I'd love to hear the story from you. Take us back to the earliest stages when you started. What did the company look like at that point? I know CryptoKitties was something that they first started with, and walk us through that chronologically. And I'll jump in here and there, but go for it. Tell us what
Well,
was up.
I was, like many people, I was a baseball card collector when I was a kid. I still
Yeah.
have all my baseball cards somewhere in the basement around here. And it was a way to actually, I learned tons about baseball by collecting, right? Reading the stats and learning about other teams that you didn't have local broadcast ability to watch, right? This is sort of before the internet. So it was a great way to stay engaged with the sport. And when I heard about NFTs, which I heard at really the same time everyone else did, when Dapper introduced CryptoKitties, I thought, the digital collecting, as we just talked about, could be a real mainstream use case for crypto. And what I was excited about was, how do you find a mainstream case that can kind of tip crypto to the general population in the way that maybe email and chat groups help tip the internet into the general population. And so my thesis was that that sort of collectibles could be the first mainstream use case. And when CryptoKitties broke the Ethereum mainnet in December of 2017, I sort of woke up, was excited by that thesis, and went and met the team. The team at Dapper is an extraordinary team, not just because of their capabilities, but because of their long-term goals. They really want to build a $100 billion company that has really brought decentralized technologies and crypto to like the planet. They have broad ambition. That excited me too. And so sports collectibles online was an obvious place to go after cats. And it was great to have a front row seat to watch them, negotiate with the NBA and the Players Association and try to get a deal in place. They also had to do a lot of work, though. They had to build the Flow blockchain because Ethereum is just not capable of scaling to support a mass market experience. And it would have broke terribly when Top Shot first came out last December and into the first quarter of this year, where it was exploding. So they also undertook this heroic task of building a blockchain, effectively an Ethereum competitor, which is really suitable to gaming. It was great to watch that.
Really fascinating. You used the word tip. I like that. And clearly NFTs have tipped, and you saw that coming. In sports, are there other categories that you think are tipping or about to tip? And are there some that people think might tip, but they probably aren't going to, in your opinion?
Well, I think sports is a natural place to really explore these new products, right? As we've talked about, NFTs can be more than just a collectible. I mean, they're made of software, and software is malleable. And so your NFTs could improve or change over time. They could become more rare. You could play them, and maybe even the provenance of the ownership of it, the fact that you owned it and then I owned it, Dan, and then someone even more prominent that both of us owned a very particular NFT, that could increase its value. So you can't, that's harder to do in the physical world. If you open up a baseball card that's really rare and it touches the air and its corner gets bent, its value declines immediately. But it's possible for a digital collectible to increase in value the more you use it, right? Think about maybe a sword in a fantasy game. As the player slays a dragon, the sword could get more power and become even more rare. And so I expect that what we're going to see are NFTs that behave differently than just a static collectible, that improve or change over time. That's yet to come. We're not seeing a lot of that yet. One other model that I think we'll see is more of what's called play to earn gaming. There's a popular blockchain game called Axie Infinity, sort of a Pokemon type battle game where you take these sort of fictional animated type characters and you battle, but those characters are themselves NFTs. And based on the outcome of the battles, you can literally earn tokens, which has real monetary value. And so the idea of being paid to be a gamer has sort of blown a lot of people's minds, but there are people earning real living wage in the Philippines, largely playing this game. And that kind of brings the idea of playing for your team to a whole new level, right? If there are digital versions of artifacts related to sports teams and you can earn money by playing with them, that just increases fan engagement.
Very interesting. I want to bring up a few other subjects and I want to get your take on it. One, athletes who are kind of realizing, I got to get into the NFT market. Oh my gosh, what am I missing? So, they're creating their own NFTs. Is there a strong potential there for those athletes to monetize themselves beyond what they would typically do? Where's your head on that?
100%. I mean, you know this because you're an attorney, but sports is like as much of a story about intellectual property and rights as it is about abilities, right? And great moments of athletic performance. And the way most teams and players and leagues have monetized is through the sale of rights or the exploitation of rights. But now we have a whole new domain for those rights to be monetized. We have a digital domain, which was much harder to monetize previously, again, for all the reasons we talked about, that you couldn't ensure ownership or scarcity. So I fully expect there to be huge lines of digital merchandise, right, from teams, collectibles, et cetera. I expect players to do the same thing, and of course, leagues to do it. And maybe even the venues themselves, right? I think will be releasing collectibles and NFTs. So we're going to see tons of sports NFTs everywhere. Not all will work, but we're sort of in an experimentation phase. But athletes definitely understand their brand. I mean, in the modern era, they know this. Social media helped drill into everyone's understanding of how to promote yourself, that you need to have online presence. And so this is just, I think, one more step in that iteration.
Interesting. What about athletes taking salaries in cryptocurrency, or even, venues accepting cryptocurrency? Is it gimmicky, for lack of a better word? Is there something there? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's gimmicky today because one thing that cryptocurrencies are terrible at is methods of payment.
Yeah.
They fluctuate too much. And so to use Bitcoin, for instance, as a method to buy your tickets could be a really short-sighted thing, because if Bitcoin goes up 2x from here, those were pretty expensive tickets.
Right.
However, there are these things called stable coins, which are cryptocurrencies that are pegged to the US dollar, for instance. And so they don't fluctuate in any value. And that does enable digital mechanisms for payment. But to be honest, that's not really what we're seeing a lot of crypto's use cases today. We will in the future. It will be a really efficient payment mechanism. So I think the athletes getting paid in Bitcoin or Ethereum is a little bit more of a statement and attention grab. But I would like to see them, start to offer exclusive products and access to their fans using tokens, crypto tokens, as the VIP card, if you will, to get into the club or be a member of the community.
Interesting. Let's talk about ticketing then. I mean, obviously we have a lot of sports teams in the audience today, and a significant portion of their revenue comes from tickets to the venue, right, to come there. Are there applications that are, in your mind, there right now for ticketing, or are you not as confident that that's one that's going to be important?
There's a lot of talk about this and a lot of different companies pursuing blockchain ticketing.
Yeah.
I think for the most part, ticketing is a pretty well-solved problem online. Like, the experience of buying a ticket and your phone becomes the pass, and in you walk. You can even press a button to sell your tickets on StubHub or the league's ticketing arm. That's pretty well, I think it's a beautiful experience, actually. It's really good. Yeah. So I struggle sometimes to say why ticketing is broken, with the exception of, the scalpers that still somehow manage to get in despite all these protections. And so in the event that that blockchain ticketing allows for less new, middlemen to come in and make margin by, using bots to beat the ticketing system, boy, that would be welcome. But I still think that's largely a smaller problem in ticketing. I think what I'm actually more interested in is, there is this concept in crypto called DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, and it's terribly named, just like everything else in crypto. We pick the worst possible names, but what are they? They're communities, right? If you think about what the internet first was, it was email and it was chat rooms. And but how did you become a member of a chat room? You just sort of joined. And did you have any ownership in the chat room? No. In fact, the chat room lives on Reddit or on some news group or something. But DAOs changed the equation a little bit. It says, well, let's form a group. We'll give everyone some tokens, or they have to buy tokens to become members of the group. And your tokens are your membership card to get in and out. And it's also, the tokens are a way to proportionally decide how we all vote, to decide the things that the group may want to do. One thing that groups might want to do is to buy things, sort of them as like shared investment groups, right? Where we all pool some money and go buy things. Well, there's already some DAOs. One was formed last week to try to buy the US Constitution. But there are DAOs that are talking about trying to buy sports teams because the sum of a lot of people's investment can be greater than any one individual owner. Now, I don't think Roger Goodell is about to allow a DAO to buy the Philadelphia Eagles or something like that. But I do think that DAOs will amass some really, really large purchasing power, and it's possible in the future we could see a DAO buy some team somewhere. Now, why is that interesting other than a bunch of people pulling their money together? Well, talk about the community having some participation in their teams. I mean, today, the only way we can voice our frustration, as I've been voicing to the management of the Philadelphia Flyers on Twitter, is, we can just yell. That's all we can do, or we can choose not to buy stuff. But there may come a time when blockchains help us have some real say, or maybe even some real ownership in our teams.
Interesting. I want to get there in just a second. But I want to say I love the comment on the names. I never thought that the word fungible would be that commonly used ever outside of a law school classroom. But here we are. And I don't know, NFTs, it's not that bad. It's okay for now. We'll see if DAO has a similar ring to it eventually. Let me ask a little bit. A week ago or so, Tim Leiweke from Oakview Group was a keynote speaker at the Dealmakers in Sports conference that SBJ puts on, and he talked extensively about environmental concerns and climate change. And you hear about some of the environmental aspects of cryptocurrencies and mining for crypto. Enlighten us on this, because frankly, I need to know more about it. How is that actually a concern that we have, and how much of a concern should it be?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, first of all, anything related to the planet is a cause that we should all be concerned about, and so it's right for people to ask questions here. The first two major blockchains, Bitcoin and Ethereum, utilize a mechanism to ensure that the transactions on their blockchain are valid that uses a lot of energy. It's a bunch of computers solving a hash function, basically guessing at random numbers, in exchange for reward. So it costs electricity cost to make that happen. And you've heard the stories about how expensive it is to run the Bitcoin network. Yeah. So the first thing I'd say is there are scores of other blockchains that do not use this type of power-hungry mechanism to secure their chain, and therefore have effectively no impact the way that people have talked about Bitcoin and Ethereum. The second thing I'd say is Ethereum is in the middle of converting itself from what was called a proof of work network, the work being compute time, to a proof of stake network, which has dramatically decreases the cost of the transactions in energy use. So I think Ethereum will make the leap over. And what we're left with now is Bitcoin, which is not going to make that conversion and is an expensive network to operate in terms of energy costs. Mm-hmm. So what people have said is, well, if we're going to have to spend energy securing the Bitcoin blockchain, which is here to stay, let's at least try to use clean energy. Yeah. And I think all of the attention on blockchain, on Bitcoin, has caused a lot of miners to emerge to say, well, let's go find cheap and renewable sources of electricity to do mining. And you're seeing that. There's a lot of what used to be coal-based electrical power securing the Bitcoin blockchain that's shifting to renewables. More work has to be done, but we shouldn't indict the entire crypto ecosystem because of that one issue, because it applies really to like 1.5 blockchains, and I think this issue will dilute over time.
Well said. Thank you. When we were doing our prep call, you had a great quote, and I'm going to read it back to you, and then I think I'll probably get you out of here on this. But the quote was, "The people who use the products are also part owners of the products," and you were referring to in the NFT and blockchain environment. But you wanted to analogize it to sports, right? Like we all want to be able to own a part of our favorite sports team. And your point was that blockchain technology, cryptocurrencies allow us to do that. So with that as the background, I'll ask you this question. Sports teams that are out there, reps from sports teams that are out there in the audience now, what would be the 2 to 3 major pieces of advice that you would give those folks heading into 2022 and beyond when it comes to this technology?
There are notions of creating crypto coins that are sometimes called social coins or social tokens, where, as we talked about before, kind of being a member of the club requires you to either buy or earn those tokens, and those tokens can increase in value. So there are very few passion activities on the planet that bring the engagement that sports does globally, right? Every culture has this ravenous fandom that exists around sports. And so, boy, if you ever wanted to find a community of people who would love to exploit their passion for maybe more than just like take dollars from my wallet while I buy things to support my team, why not, take dollars of my wallet to have some shared ownership in my team? So now not only am I, motivated to crap talk on Twitter about how great my team is, but I'm motivated to get more people to attend the games, or I'm certainly motivated for the team to make better decisions about winning and about staffing. And I'm also maybe motivated in, to recruit more fans for my team, right? And so there is a scenario in the future where large, let's call them assets that might be communally owned, could be based on crypto. Now, I don't think any sports owner is about to start giving up ownership of their team to the fans, and you could just see the chaos that could ensue when I start telling the Flyers how to run their team. But surely there's a smart economic incentive to have fans be somehow part owner or part have some incentive to remain a fan. And we're seeing that in a lot of other crypto communities. Software developers choose the crypto platforms they want to build on, not just because it's the right technical decision, but because they get a piece of ownership as denominated in tokens. And if they build on the platform and it does well and gets bigger, the token goes up in price, and now they're paid effectively for being an owner in the network. Well, I can see the same thing happening for fan communities. Now, it may be a little far out, but it feels somewhat inevitable to me.
Wonderful. David, thank you so much for your time. This has been great. To the audience, don't go anywhere. We've got a lot more in store. Have a great day.
Thank you.